guys. So Tyler was wondering, and hopefully this will help anybody else, Power Beyond on the John Deere tractors, you always go to this SCV first, the way it's the return circuit is routed, but I had to add another one over there just because I didn't have the money to add the third SCV. But it's a very simple kit to install, and it's a very simple kit overall. You get these couplers, you get the fittings, the hoses, your pressure and your return fitting, and then this little piece right here is just an extension piece to your control rod because you move, and this block comes with it. And so and bolts. So you literally just take your 4 bolts off, put the block on, grease all the O-rings, and it helps hold the packings in place. If you use a good cold stiff grease, put the grease in the fridge, don't be scared, but the grease helps hold the packings in place. Then you just bolt everything back on, you put the lever on and just simply adjust it, then you just bolt the stuff together. It's very straightforward, very easy to do. When they talk 0K strain, that is that plug right there. If your parts guy has a hard time finding that, they can go back to the old moldboard plows. The old hydraulic moldboard, the old moldboard plows had a hydraulic trip to them, and they had a case drain. That was there. You return, this is my return, this is my pressure. You return your hydraulic motor through here. The only line you hook up to that port would be your zero return, your bleed line, like your seal weep lines. So if you have 2 hoses coming off a motor, you got your pressure and return. Pressure and return. If you have 3 lines, you got your pressure, return, and your bleed. Your bleed is what goes down there. The main pump of the tractor puts out more oil than the charge pump of the transmission feeding it. But in any situation, your return oil, whether it's a loader or a motor back here, your return oil gets pushed right back into the charge circuit. It's filtered and gets shoved right back into the charge circuit, right up to the main pump. So they're taking into account that unless you're doing a one-way cylinder, you're going to have some return oil helping that system out. So that's why you return through here. If you return down there, you'll start that motor, and within seconds you'll start to see it chatter, lines will bounce, because you literally just pumped all your oil out of the main pump and out of your transmission cooler and everything, and pumped it right into the rear end. So it's pretty simple. You can get the kit from Deere, or you can get the kit from Aftermarket Resources. I think this one's the John Deere one, that one's the aftermarket, and it's probably half the cost on the aftermarket one, but they're 90% identical. When I go down the road, so this one runs the vacuum of the planter, that one runs my Ross and my 2 motors that run my population on the planter, and then when I'm spraying, I'll run off of this side. So I have that metering block from the old 7200 series planters. That was a good metering block. It has a very nice adjustability to it. I showed it on the bale wrapper. I unplug my pressure ports when I'm running down the road, or first thing in the morning when we're starting everything up and you're taking some time and you're filling the planter, stuff like that. But once I'm up and running for the day, the only time I will unplug them again is when I'm coming home from a distance with the tractor. To let the vacuum run all day, that's no big deal. To let the Ross and motors sit and run, that circulates some oil, it's no big deal. But in the morning, if I know that I'm going to leave the farm here, head over to West Rock, stop, fill the planter over there, it's going to be a couple hours of run time, well, then I just unplug. All right, so we got the 656 in the shop. This is a customer. I'm probably the worst shop photographer. We run a repair shop, and I only have a couple repair videos. But all he's complaining about is oil coming out right here off of his steering column. And so we'll pull the steering and pull the steering wheel and start from the top down and see if we can't get to that seal somehow, what that's all going to take. This tractor didn't have tilt steering, but I took this console here off anyhow just to inspect back here, make sure there's no line or something that's leaking, causing the oil. Pop the pop the steering cover off. We'll get the wrench up there and we'll see if we can't get that wheel off. So for pulling these old steering wheels, there's a hole there, but I don't know, I'd have to try and find the other hole to pull, and there might not be another hole to pull the steering wheel. So Dad and the other old timers at the dealerships always told me that with your air hammer, you put the nut on the bolt to protect the bolt and give it a couple burps while you're pulling out with the steering wheel, and it should pop off. And we'll give it a try to see if it works. I don't know. Well, that worked. That was probably the most fight I've had a steering wheel put up in a long time. I hate it too on these old ones because they're already all cracked up and busted, and every once in a while you get one that just disintegrates on you. So now we got to see what we're up against. That motor somehow hooks. There's our felt, and there's a snap ring, so I'd imagine behind that snap ring. So let's go look at the new parts they brought us to see what we got going on. Some type of packing. Everything else looks pretty clean. So everything went back in really nice, and snap rings in place. That felt packing, got him back in there. Before we put this boot back on, we'll put the wheel on and just run it for 5 minutes till it smokes up the shop. And I'll just sit here and turn the wheel back and forth for 5 minutes. And if we don't get any oil, well then we'll put the boot back on and call it a success. Well, I ran it long enough to smoke her up in here. And it's nice and dry. It's nice and dry. Some of this oil fills this little pocket in here when I pop the other seals out. But yeah, so far it looks good. So we'll button it back up. And we'll just put this little cover back on. And let's go get my grain cart home. Well, I got the last silage bale for 2018 from the 2018 crop, and then then I think I can afford to sell them 3, and that would be about it. I have to haul them up by the buggy and the combine there because that's the only spot that I can set them down and then park the wagon on the road and have room to use the 4430 and get them, because there's no way excuse me, there's no way I'm getting them through here. And so yeah, beautiful day, let's move some hay.